There have always been arguments about the pros and cons of sending your child to a single-sex school. But now it looks as if Prince William and Kate Middleton could break with tradition and decide not to send their eldest son, Prince George, to the historic Eton College, a famously single-sex school. Speculation's growing that George might instead follow in his mother's footsteps and be educated at Marlborough College in Wiltshire. I'm joined now by author and educator Francis Gilbert. Good to see you. And Caroline Farrow from CitizenGo joins us down the line. So let's start with Francis. Eton, obviously all chaps, Marlborough College co-ed. Where do you stand on single-sex schools or mixed schools?
I'm strongly supportive of mixed-sex schools, having taught in single-sex schools and mixed-sex schools in my career as a teacher. And I do think there's significant social benefits from girls and boys and non-binary people to mix with, different genders, as it were. I've just observed that. I also think there are cognitive benefits. I think boys and girls benefit intellectually from having different discussions. So I think I'd be strongly supportive of Kate's decision.
I mean, traditionally, we used to be told anyway that the problem with co-ed schools was that girls get to a certain stage where what they really want to do is kind of impress and attract the boys. And therefore, what they tend to do is play down their braininess because they don't want to appear cleverer than the boy that they would quite like to go out with or fancy or would quite like a snog with or whatever it is. And so you suddenly get the whole thing where the girls are kind of holding themselves back and reining themselves in. The boys can't quite concentrate in the presence of the girls, which is so, when you get to a certain teenage, so exciting and so arousing, they can't really concentrate at all. And so you've got that kind of whole Grease is the word thing going on, where the girls aren't fulfilling their academic potential and the boys can't concentrate or fulfill theirs either. And that used to be the argument, very strongly held argument, in favour of single-sex education.
I don't think that's the case anymore. I think schools have really taken a step to really make sure that girls are challenging themselves and really doing subjects, for example, that perhaps traditionally they didn't do, such as science and physics. And I've certainly seen, schools taking really proactive action not to let that happen, because obviously that is not a good thing at all. My experience is that it's a win-win situation where girls are being really pushed to intellectually challenge themselves, and boys actually often perhaps can be cognitively not so high in ability at certain ages, and they're pulled up in a certain sense by being around kind of cognitively challenging situations.
Let me bring Caroline Farrow from CitizenGo into this. Hi, Caroline. So you're listening to Francis extolling the virtues of a co-educational school. What do you think?
I think it's horses for courses. So I'm not here to tell anybody what they should and shouldn't do. However, I've got 5 children who've all been in single-sex schools. My eldest 3 are still in a single-sex school, and they've been given the choice all along. And all along we've had this conversation: do you want to be in mixed sex? And it certainly suited them really well. And from my perspective, so firstly, we know that girls in single-sex schools perform much better, and it's similar to what you were saying, Vanessa, but maybe not quite so sexist, in simply that girls feel less empowered to take risks when they're around boys. We know that they don't join in sports so much. We hear reports of them not wanting to get pink and sweaty in front of the boys. They're deterred from doing some of these STEM subjects simply because, boys it's perceived as being more boisterous, more irritating, more competitive. And we also know as well, it's interesting, I think single-sex schools benefit girls perhaps more than boys, because we know that for boys, when boys are in a co-ed situation, girls are supposed to, I even had one co-ed head say this to me, which I thought was shocking: girls rub the corners off boys, and girls help boys to do some of the liberals and humanities subjects that they may not choose otherwise. So I think it's a win-win for a boy, but not quite so good for a girl. And of course, as well, in a single-sex school, it's much easier for the sexes, specifically girls, for things like PSHE. So when they're discussing these very complicated and sensitive issues around puberty, it's girls get much more peer-on-peer support if they don't have to worry about boys when they're talking about sensitive subjects like puberty, like sex, and as well, actually, in this age of sort of gender confusion, where you've got a single-sex schools, actually, you're not going to have a situation of a girl having to share her changing room and her facilities with a biological boy. And certainly, you know, my eldest daughter went to single-sex school for secondary. She got given the option, do you want to move to co-ed for sixth form? She didn't. Now she's at university, she's at medical school. And I've said to her, do you feel that you were socially disadvantaged by going to a single-sex school? You know, do you feel like you've been set back in terms of how you can socialize? Would you change anything? And she's like, no, absolutely not. And she said she felt that if she'd gone to a co-ed school, because she was very good at languages too, that she might actually have sort of been fed off into that option. And she was really glad that she wasn't educated with boys. So, and certainly, you know, when we look at the academic research, we know that children who are educated in single-sex environments perform better. Although, to be very fair,
let me bring Francis back in, Caroline. So the idea that, you know, for girls, it's better to be learning about sex, relationships and everything else with other girls. Also better for sport because you don't have to worry about getting sweaty in front of the boys because they're not there. You can just be yourself much better and you can, you know, fulfill whatever it is, whatever potential you have without even thinking about who's watching you or what they think of you. You're just learning.
I would say that perhaps that might have been the case 15 years ago, but I think schools have really taken massive steps, and there's been a lot of teacher education, which I'm involved in myself at Goldsmiths, in improving this situation so that girls and boys learn to work together in a much more kind of mindful and aware way. And obviously, you know, the issues around sort of gender politics means that perhaps mixed-sex schools are the way forward. I've actually worked quite significantly with single-sex schools that have become mixed-sex schools recently for this very reason, because there are equality issues involved. And I do think that, you know, I would like to reassure parents that girls in mixed-sex schools really do get challenged, and this sort of sexist behaviour just is not tolerated anymore. And I do think that schools have taken massive strides to really make, you know, a girl's experience in a mixed-sex school a really safe one and a really cognitive challenge one. And if you look at the research over time, girls and boys really benefit from this mixed-sex environment, largely in a way because of the social experience. They actually learn to interact with each other, which is a vital thing that we haven't talked about much.
Thank you both very much indeed. So what is the significance of Prince William and Kate breaking royal tradition by not sending their son to Eton? Let's get more on the story with royal commentator Afua Hagan. Hi, Afua, good to have you on the show. So this is the Waleses really forging their own path when it comes to Prince George's education.
Oh, absolutely. We know that Kate went to Marlborough College herself and she excelled there. And this is seen as Kate perhaps trying to modernise the monarchy, as it were. We know that Prince William and, of course, Prince Harry both went to Eton, and Prince Harry has talked about not particularly enjoying his time there. King Charles III went to Gordonston and he didn't enjoy his time there at all, and that's a Scottish boarding school, which is a single-sex school as well. And Marlborough College, £47,000 a year, co-ed, day school and boarding. And by sending Prince George there, if that's where they decide that he's going to go, we know that Kate has toured there by herself in October, and also perhaps with George and Prince William on the 1st of December. If it is decided that he is going to go there, he will be the first heir that will have gone to a co-education school and will not have gone to Eton. So yes, this is about the Prince and Princess of Wales doing what's best for their children and perhaps, you know, making moves to modernise the monarchy.
I mean, I suppose you could say that that's exactly what the current king did when he decided to send William to Eton and not to Gordonston, because he had been so unhappy with that kind of tough, outdoor, enormously kind of athletic education, which didn't suit him at all. I think he thought that William would be much happier at Eton than he'd been at Gordonston, and he cared about that, didn't he?
Yes, absolutely. He did care about that, cared about his education. And Kate clearly is about that as well. Now, she went to a school before Marlborough, didn't enjoy her time there, experienced some bullying, but at Marlborough College, it's thought that's where she excelled. That's where she really, you know, found her own path. And we do know, of course, she has the Shaping Us project which is all about the early years. But the early years, of course, set us up for later in life. And she wants to carry on the good things that she's trying to impart into the early years of children up and down the country, and of course, her own children, and take that into their future. And education is a huge, huge part of that. They're at prep school at the moment, and that goes up to 13 years old. So perhaps we won't see him at Marlborough College for a good 3 years, but it looks like that could be the place where they send Prince George. And then perhaps Prince Louis and Princess Charlotte will follow in his footsteps.
And Afua, what we do have to show is a really sweet picture that's just been released in time for the festive season. And this is of Kate, the Princess of Wales, as a little girl. It's very, very sweet. She's very, very small in the picture. Have you seen it?
Yes,
She's
she
adorable.
is. Taken in 1983. And doesn't she look like Prince Louis, actually,
Yeah,
in
she
this
does.
picture? I think they are really identical. And this was released, some festive memories, because of Shaping Us. Like I mentioned, that's her early years project. This was on their social media page on Instagram, and they've captioned it, sharing some festive memories this Christmas, because hashtag Shaping Us is all about the vital importance of our early years and the role played by those around us in shaping the rest of our lives. And of course, they had a plug for their carol service, for Kate's carol service. They put Don't Miss Together at Christmas Carol Service, which is going to be shown on Christmas Eve. So that is the Princess of Wales taken at Christmas in 1983. And like I said, just the absolute spitting image of Prince Louis, almost identical.
Thank you, Afua, very much indeed.